The jars go onto that carrier beside the table. From here they pass through a decontamination chamber and into the remote control laboratory across the hall, where we can run biochemical and histological techniques. Finished slides and mounted specimens then go through another decontamination process to the outside lab. Theoretically, this place is proof against anything. It seems to be, Mary said, obviously impressed. I've never seen anything so elegant. Neither did I until Thurston's disease became a problem, Kramer shrugged as he sat down behind the controls. Watch now, he said as he pressed a button. Let's see what's on the deck. Man or monkey? Want to make a bet? I'll give you 2-to-1 it's a monkey. She shook her head. The low door slid aside, and a steel carriage emerged into the necropsy room, bearing the nude body of a man. The corpse gleamed pallidly under the harsh, shadowless glare of the fluorescence in the ceiling, as Kramer, using the handlers, rolled it onto the post-mortem table and clamped it in place on its back. He pushed another button, and the carriage moved back into the wall, and the steel door slid shut. That'll be decontaminated, he said, and sent back upstairs for another body. I'd have lost, he remarked idly. Lately the posts have been running 3-to-1 in favor of monkeys. He moved a handler and picked up a heavy scalpel from the instrument rack. There's a certain advantage to this, he said as he moved the handler delicately. These gadgets give a tremendous mechanical advantage. I can cut right through small bones and cartilage without using a saw. How nice, Mary said. I expect you enjoy yourself. I couldn't ask for better equipment, he replied noncommittally. With deft motion of the handler, he drew the scalpel down across the chest and along the costal margins in the classic inverted Y incision. We'll take a look at the thorax first, he said, as he used the handlers to pry open the rib cage and expose the thoracic viscera. Ah, thought so. See that? He pointed with a small handler that carried a probe. Look at those lungs. He swung a viewer into place so Mary could see better. Look at those abscesses and necrosis. It's Thurston's disease, all right, with secondary bacterial invasion. The grayish, solidified masses of tissue looked nothing like the normal pink appearance of healthy lungs. Studded with yellowish, spherical abscesses, they lay swollen and engorged within the gaping cavity of the chest. You know the pathogenesis of Thurston's disease? Kramer asked. Mary shook her head, her face yellowish white in the glare of the fluorescence. It begins with a bronchial cough, Kramer said. The virus attacks the bronchioles first, destroys them, and passes into the deeper tissues of the lungs. As with most virus diseases, there is a transitory leukopenia, a drop in the number of white blood cells, and a rise in temperature of about 2 or 3 degrees. As the virus attacks the alveolar structures, the temperature rises and the white blood cell count becomes elevated. The lungs become inflamed and painful. There is a considerable quantity of lymphoid exudate and pleural effusion. Secondary invaders and pus-forming bacteria follow the viral destruction of the lung tissue and form abscesses. Breathing becomes progressively more difficult as more lung tissue is destroyed. Hepatization and necrosis inactivate more lung tissue as the bacteria get in their dirty work, and finally the patient suffocates. But what if the bacteria are controlled by antibiotics? Then the virus does the job. It produces atelectasis, followed by progressive necrosis of lung tissue with gradual liquefaction of the parenchyma. It's slower but just as fatal. This fellow was lucky. He apparently stayed out of here until he was almost dead. Probably he's had the disease for about a week. If he had come in early, we could have kept him alive for maybe a month. The end, however, would have been the same, Mary said faintly. You'll get used to it. We get 1 or 2 every day. He shrugged. There's nothing here that's interesting, he said as he released the clamps and tilted the table. For what seemed to Mary an interminable time, the cadaver clung to the polished steel. Then abruptly it slid off the shining surface and disappeared through the square hole in the floor. "We'll clean up now," Kramer said as he placed the instruments in the autoclave, closed the door and locked it, and pressed 3 buttons on the console. From jets embedded in the walls, a fine spray filled the room with fog. "Germicide," Kramer said. "Later there'll be steam. That's all for now. Do you want to go?" Mary nodded. "If you feel a little rocky, there's a bottle of scotch in my desk. I'll split a drink with you when we get out of here." "Thanks," Mary said. "I think I could use one." "Barton, where's the McNeil stain?" Kramer's voice came from the lab. "I left it on the sink and it's gone." "It's with the other blood stains and reagents. Second drawer from the right in the big cabinet. There's a label on the drawer," Mary called from the office. "If you can wait until I finish filing these papers, I'll come in and help you." "I wish you would." Kramer's voice was faintly exasperated. "Ever since you've organized my lab, I can't find anything." "You just have a disorderly mind," Mary said, as she slipped the last paper into its proper folder and closed the file. "I'll be with you in a minute." "I don't dare lose you," Kramer said as Mary came into the lab. "You've made yourself indispensable. It'd take me 6 months to undo what you've done in 1. Not that I mind," he amended, "but I was used to things the way they were." He looked around the orderly laboratory with a mixture of pride and annoyance. "Things are so neat they're almost painful." "You look more like a pathologist should," Mary said as she deftly removed the tray of blood slides from in front of him and began to run the stains. "It's my job to keep you free to think." "Whose brilliant idea is that? Yours?" "No, the director's. He told me what my duties were when I came here, and I think he's right. You should be using your brain rather than fooling around with blood stains and sectioning tissues." "But I like to do things like that," Kramer protested. "It's relaxing." "What right have you to relax?" Mary said. "Outside people are dying by the thousands and you want to relax. Have you looked at the latest mortality reports?" "No." "You should. The WHO estimates that nearly 2 billion people have died since Thurston's disease first appeared in epidemic proportions. That's 2 out of 3. And more are dying every day. Yet you want to relax." "I know," Kramer said. "But what can we do about it? We're working, but we're getting no results." "You might use that brain of yours," Mary said bitterly. "You're supposed to be a scientist. You have facts. Can't you put them together?" "I don't know," he shrugged. "I've been working on this problem longer than you think. I come down here at night. I know, I clean up after you. I haven't gotten anywhere. Sure, we can isolate the virus. It grows nicely on monkey lung cells. But that doesn't help. The thing has no apparent antigenicity. It parasitizes, but it doesn't trigger any immune reaction. We can kill it, but the strength of the germicide is too great for living tissue to tolerate." "Some people seem to be immune." "Sure they do, but why?" "Don't ask me. I'm not the scientist." "Play like one," Kramer growled. "Here are the facts. The disease attacks people of all races and ages. So far, everyone who is attacked dies. Adult Europeans and Americans appear to be somewhat more resistant than others on a population basis. Somewhere around 60% of them are still alive. But it's wiped out better than 80% of some groups. Children get it worse. Right now, I doubt if 1% of the children born during the past 10 years are still alive." "It's awful," Mary said. "It's worse than that. It's extinction. Without kids, the race will die out." Kramer rubbed his forehead. "Have you any ideas?" "Children have less resistance," Kramer replied. "An adult gets exposed to a number of diseases to which he builds an immunity. Possibly one of these has a cross immunity against Thurston's virus." "Then why don't you work on that line?" Mary asked. "Just what do you think I've been doing? That idea was put out months ago, and everyone has been taking a crack at it. There are 24 laboratories working full-time on that facet, and God knows how many more working part-time like we are. I've screened a dozen common diseases,